Most of the properties that pretty much, cover a good part of the property. Most of the development covers a good part of the property, and maybe you want to look at some of those things as well. So the ideas are just some minor changes in permitting the residential uses, 1, 2, 3 in family homes, the idea of multiple dwellings, and possibly look at the design guidelines. Those are not all real dramatic changes. The most dramatic being probably to permit multiple dwellings. You already permit senior dwellings, senior housing in that zone. So what we really are doing now is throwing out for discussion, because we never really focused on what, if anything, ought to happen along Greenwich Avenue different than what's in the zoning now. And what you're thinking is, at this point, is that, at least I think that's what we've gathered from the last few discussions, is that to maintain the flexibility, we'll go with the CS zone, maybe modify it to make it a CS1, and add the house of worship into that zone, and then possibly make some other changes. Right now, it's the proposal, the actual draft local law before you is just to make the CS1 with the house of worship. There was one other change which we really haven't discussed a lot, but made it onto some of our maps, and that's at the lower end, the property along Close, across from the shopping center and the diner. That's in a CS zone now as well, and would remain that way, or it could be a design shopping zone so that it was similar to the property across the street. And there's a little tail on that property that's actually in a residential zone, which is sort of useless, and just that map sort of shows it incorporated into the design shopping zone. So that's where we are, and I think that's where we want to have a discussion. This is what I was talking about, the last thing I was talking about here. This piece here is the Greenwich, this closed, people shopping center, and it's this piece, which is, it's got a steep grade on it. It comes back up to here, but it really focuses the front here, and this little tail here is in the, I guess it's the R3, I'm not sure, but anyway, it's a small piece of land, it's part of the same property.
Thanks, Steve. I just wanted to add, just jump in with my 2 cents and say that, I guess the sum and substance of the reaction of a lot of us, and a lot of it was due to the public, and due to Mr. Ely and Mr. Green and other people that contacted us and other people that were here, that, I, at least speaking for myself, very strongly feel that in no way do we want to make any zoning changes on Greenwich Avenue that would make it more restrictive and make it more difficult for the people there. And when that was brought to our attention, I think there was a lot of sentiment that we wanted those changes made.
I think I have a couple of questions. Fine, yeah?
Yeah.
I was an original proponent of the C1, so CS1, so I think it's a very good idea. I have a couple of questions about its implementation, though. Doesn't the architectural design district already go up all the way?
Yes.
So if that's the case, then the changes in, I guess, would take place in the bulk? Is that where we didn't?
Yeah, there's no specific proposed changes.
Okay, so the concept of parking being in the side or on the back as opposed to in front is already
in the architectural.
Yeah. I'm just remembering, so I want to make sure I'm being correct. Yeah. And that includes the landscaping, etc., and lighting. Exactly. So, all right.
And there's already provisions in the code, in addition to that deal with landscaping and lighting generally.
Great. Okay. Great. Which gives me a comfort zone.
Oh yeah.
When you talked about making it 1, 2, or 3 family houses, we already have residential above the commercial.
Yes.
So when you said residential dwellings, you were talking about multiple dwellings.
No, the first instance, yes, both. In the first instance, the thinking was that there are a few residential buildings that are 1 or 2 or 3 families there.
Yes.
But they're not permitted, they're
No, I understand.
non-conforming. So that would give them the comfort of knowing that they are, and they,
And
okay,
perhaps be able to
sold
invest
or, right.
yeah.
And then the idea was maybe add multiple dwellings to the zone.
Well, that's what I want to talk about first,
Yeah.
you know, what we're talking about when we talk about multiple dwellings.
Yeah.
I mean, the parcels, and I don't know exactly what your demarcations are here, but in the areas where you're talking about having enough acreage for multiple dwellings, from I Street on up, you're talking about what size parcels? In general, no.
We
No,
have.
this is vacant. So, Steve,
So
can
we
you
have-
help me and give
They
me?
have 6 acres. 6 acres, we have 3.5.
Paul,
We have 4.5.
And behind, that's still,
Behind is,
still Zachman?
yeah, that's still Good Time Park, but the area, this is all Good Time Park.
Yeah.
But this area immediately behind these properties is all state federal land.
Yeah, right.
So the
And Good
development,
Time
Pretty
Park is
restricted.
still approved, and
it's,
how can it not have run out at this point? I mean, it's been so long, how can it not have run out?
it's conditional final, the conditions are getting permits from the outside agencies, and
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Was that Good Time Park?
Yeah. At any rate, that's an aside. So if we were to use our present density, I'm trying to come to a conclusion as to how many units you're talking about, or whether this, you know, whether that's the kind of density you want, or I just want to understand what kind of density.
The present density, if you use the R3, for
Right.
instance, which is where you have your only multiple dwellings.
Right.
I think the density ranges from, there's about 3 or 4 units per acre, and so on a 4-acre parcel, you end up with 12 or 16 units. 16.
Which is the same zoning as Good Time Park.
Now that might or might not be viable. I mean, but that's what it is now. We
I understand.
thought that there might need to be
A little fair, yeah.
yeah.
What is the McBride, how many units per acre the old McBride, the senior housing was converted to?
Well, that's the senior housing.
Well, that was senior housing now, or?
well, in their current zoning, the planned adult community
Yeah.
is 15 units per net usable acre.
Well, that's 15.
Yeah, that's high.
Yeah, with a maximum development coverage of 35%.
Well, the CS is a 35% building coverage.
Building coverage, right? This is the PAC had a development coverage.
I'm just trying to get an idea of the
Me
difference.
too.
So it's about a quarter or about a half of that?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's less.
Less than half?
Yeah. Less than that.
Just trying to think if it would be economically viable for someone to put in housing under those. I don't know, I don't do that, so.
We would think that it probably.
Doesn't sound like-
an acre, are you saying, suggesting?
No, I'm not suggesting anything particular.
No, just what the code is.
The code
I'm just
now.
trying to, if we
Yeah.
follow the code, my question, to be quite honest, my question is, okay, multiple dwellings,
Yeah.
and what density
Yeah.
are we talking? Because if you're talking the same density that you have in an R3 area, where there is more open space and other access, then it's different than right up on Greenwich Avenue. So I'm not saying that I'm against the multiple dwelling. I'm saying at what density does it not become something that is destructive to that? I'm not looking to block multiple dwelling. I'm looking for a density that is appropriate for that parcel.
It's with double-edged sword. It's either you don't want too much density, but you don't,
Right.
it can't be not enough so that nobody does anything.
That's the number I'm looking for. That's the number I'm looking for.
Well, I think if you had, for instance, if you rezoned it and it was built as market rate housing, it wasn't planned adult community, something, I would think that you would need more than the R3 zone now, and probably somewhere, and I don't know if there's no magic number, you want it to fit into the scale of the area and so on, but probably, somewhere, say, around 6 or 8 units per acre would be, which is about twice what you have now. But we really want to We want,
That's the number I think that's key.
yeah,
That number I think
yeah.
is key, because I embrace the concept,
yeah,
but it is different than other areas, and I don't want to make it non-viable. I
Right.
just want to not have it be
Right.
destructive, all coming out onto that.
right.
I can share with you, if I can speak now.
Mhm.
You're all familiar with Mike Walker, who did the senior housing, and he was at one point in